What's going on, guys? Briar Rabbit here. Today, Bungie held a live stream in which they gave us a preview of the sandbox changes they're making with update 2.5.0.2. Now, this patch is going to be released next week, but today in their live stream, they really did show us quite a few huge changes that are coming to the sandbox, to the weapon balance of Destiny's PvP arena. And this should be a lot of fun to test out. Because a lot of these changes are going to be really significant and should change the meta up quite a bit inside Destiny. This video, we're going to go over all of the changes they announced in the stream. Next week, when they release the patch, I would highly suspect that the patch notes that come along with that patch will further reveal some more changes they didn't get to this week. So look forward to that. In this video, though, we're going to go through all the changes they announced in the live stream, and at the end of the video, I'll give you guys my thoughts on those changes. Obviously, I haven't played the patch yet, so we'll just have to wait and see once the patch is live to see how it actually works out. So let's start off with shotguns. They decreased magnetism and removed aim assist from hipfire when using a shotgun. They reduced in-air accuracy with shotguns. Rangefinder, the perk on shotguns, will now decrease ADS speed, and it seemed to be a fairly significant decrease as well. The movement penalty when using a shotgun, which was introduced in Year 2, has been removed. They removed the precision headshot damage multiplier. So this works in PvE and in PvP. When you shoot somebody in the head, you no longer get a precision headshot damage multiplier. Now, this would really affect things poorly in PvE, so they changed the damage boost in PvE on all shotguns to add an extra 20% damage. The Chaperone and the Universal Remote will be keeping their precision headshot damage multiplier because otherwise there'd be no reason to use them. Pulse rifles. Now, this is going to be a big change to the meta. They're reducing the rate of fire for the highest rate of fire pulse rifles by 7.7%. This basically equates to 1 frame longer time to kill for the highest rate of fire pulse rifles like the Grasp of Malak and the Clever Dragon. So it's not a huge change, even though 7.7% seems like a big change. It ends up being 1 frame out of 30 frames per second. So it won't be that big a change. They also, on the Clever Dragon and Grasp of Malak, have reduced their magazine size. So especially if you're running perks that further reduce that, you could wind up with very small magazines on these high rate of fire pulse rifles. They've also reduced the efficacy of high caliber rounds on pulse rifles, and they've reduced the flinch on all pulse rifles. So you're going to see a lot less flinch from high caliber rounds and all pulse rifles in general. On the other side of the spectrum, they've increased the rate of fire for low rate of fire pulse rifles by 5.3% for a faster time to kill, which means that the fast rate of fire pulse rifles like the Clever Dragon and the Grasp of Malak are getting a nerf, but the slow rate of fire pulse rifles like the Spare Change are actually getting a buff, which is great news. I'm really excited to pull some of those out of the vault. Next up, hand cannons. Hand cannons, I got to be honest with you, it seems like they listened to my innermost wishes and desires for hand cannons and put them into the game. So here are the changes to hand cannons. They've significantly increased initial accuracy. This is back to Year 1 setting. So when you fire your first bullet out of a hand cannon, there is no bloom. That bullet goes where you're aiming exactly, this is a hugely good change. Next up, follow-up shots will keep the Year 2 accuracy dynamic with bloom affecting trigger spam. So if you just fire your hand cannon as fast as you can, your accuracy is going to be affected by that. Now, because of the initial accuracy buff, they've nerfed range a little bit. Range fall-off will be more dramatic to compensate for increased accuracy. They've reduced base range by 5 meters for faster damage, aim assist, and magnetism drop-off, but the aim assist and magnetism drop-off will affect high-range hand cannons far more than low-range hand cannons. They have also reduced the max range damage from 50% to 33%. So if you're cross-mapping somebody with a hand cannon, it's going to be doing less damage at its absolute furthest ranges. Auto rifles are getting across-the-board buffs here, and I'm very happy to see this. Base damage increase for low rate of fire auto rifles. So things like the Shadow Price, the Soros Regime are going to get more damage per bullet. They've also increased precision damage for all auto rifles, including the high rate of fire auto rifles like the Doctrine of Passing from 1.25% to 1.3%. This is a very small change, but hopefully it makes for a big change on those low rate of fire auto rifles and makes them effective in the Crucible. That would be great news. They also made some changes to special weapon ammo economy. Players start matches with special ammo just like they do now, but when you die, you lose all your special, similar to how heavy works. If you die with special on you, you lose it. Special weapon will now spawn every 60 seconds, so those green crates will spawn more rapidly to account for the fact that when you die, you lose it. The radius for sharing special ammo is going to be reduced from 100 meters to 75 meters, so you're less likely to get special if a teammate opens a crate. You really want to be as close to that crate as you can be. Now, in trials, you will keep your special ammo between rounds, but lose it when you die. So I'm a little worried about this part because it may lead to some steamrolling in Trials of Osiris. A team that gets wiped in the first round of Trials of Osiris is going to be a significant disadvantage going into the second. Icebreaker and Invective will continue to generate their own special ammo, so no changes to Icebreaker and Invective. The trade-off is that other weapons, the green crates are going to spawn in every 60 seconds, so what's really going to be the benefit to Icebreaker and Invective? Maybe just so you don't have to go out and get those green crates. And sidearms will remain unchanged. They still respawn with ammo, so sidearms could become a lot more popular in the Crucible. We've also got some base changes to the way the game works that don't really fit into specific weapon categories, but change the Crucible in significant ways. Pulse rifles, scout rifles, and auto rifles have an across-the-board accuracy increase when fired in the air. So kind of like hand cannons are very useful while you're in the air, now auto rifles, scout rifles, and pulse rifles will be able to do a similar thing. Although they did mention specifically that they won't be as good as hand cannons when fired in the air. They'll be usable from in the air, but not as good as hand cannons. Hand cannons are still going to have that class kind of locked up. High caliber rounds will now increase flinch on hand cannons and scout. This is a bug that was in the game. High caliber rounds actually had the opposite effect when used on hand cannons and scouts. That's been fixed moving forward, that's a great change. Next, we've got a few changes for some subclasses, most notably the Stormcaller, I think. They've reduced the Stormcaller power melee range to other Warlock power melee ranges. So the Warlock Stormcaller melee range is no longer going to be sniper distance capable. It's going to be more in line with other Warlock melees, which is, I think, a very welcome change. Also, with Stormcallers, when using landfall, you will now have reduced total time in Storm Trance. So if you choose that perk for your Storm Trance won't last as long as it used to. The Blade Dancer is getting a somewhat surprising change here. Hungering Blade kills now immediately start regenerating health, but now not shields. As they also are getting an instant boost to player health or shields. So what happens is when you get a kill with Hungering Blade equipped, you will get an instant boost to either your health or your shields. Depending on what your health is, it may even transfer, give you a little bit of health and a little bit of shield, just kind of depending on where you're at with your health and shields. So you'll get that initial bump in your health. However, if you still have shields up, you're not going to start regenerating shields. If you are low on health, you'll start regenerating health immediately, but it will stop and it will not keep regenerating your shields. So to me, it looks like Blade Dancers are going to get a little more vulnerable in the Crucible. Gunslingers are getting a small change. The throwing knife now deals solar damage. So if you're playing a strike that has solar damage as a modifier, the throwing knife is going to be a lot of fun to use in there. Titans. The Juggernaut is now disabled when a player is in the air for a short time. This looks like it'd be about 2 to 3 seconds. So if you just, slide off a ledge or slide off a rock, your Juggernaut is going to remain on. But if you jump in the air and are in the air for a long period of time, your Juggernaut will stay on for about 2 to 3 seconds and then kind of blink off. The Juggernaut can also now not be activated while in the air. So you can't sprint forward, jump in the air, and have that Juggernaut activate, that shield activate while you're in the air. So the Juggernaut is going to now be a much more ground-based talent. They're changing some exotics too. They didn't talk a lot about the exotics. I would expect to see more exotic talk in the actual patch notes. They mentioned the Universal Remote real quick. They said it's getting a nerf. Don't know exactly what that's going to be. The Young Wolf's Howl is going to cost less ammo per use, which I think is going to be popular. Young Wolf's Howl is a really cool exotic that nobody uses because it's just not efficient. It uses too much ammo per use, which is just too bad. So those are the changes that they announced today during the live stream. I'm going to say, honestly, across the board, I really like these changes. Shotguns are getting a nerf, but they're not getting nerfed into the ground. They're going to be a little bit slower to use. They're going to be a little bit harder to use while you're bouncing around in the air. Hip fire isn't going to work as well as it used to. Aiming down sights is going to be more important, but it's also going to be a little bit slower if you have rangefinder. These are changes, they're small adjustments to the way shotguns work, and hopefully it seems like they'll become a little more of a defensive weapon, a little bit less of an offensive weapon. They'll still be used offensively for sure, but the way they're being adjusted, I really like. They're not getting hammered down into the ground. They're just being adjusted. Pulse rifles. This is a huge change for pulse rifles. The Clever Dragon, Grasp of Malik are getting nerfed, and it looks like they're going to get nerfed pretty hard. They're going to be slower time to kill. They're going to have less bullets in them. They're also going to have less flinch. They're going to have less effectiveness out of high caliber rounds. Major changes to the Clever Dragon and the Grasp of Malik. However, you're going to get more use out of the low rate of fire pulse rifles, which I think is a really welcome change because those things haven't really been in the meta for like a year and a half, and it'll be fun to use some of those again. Hand cannons, I feel like they listened to exactly what the community wanted. Community wanted them to remove bloom from hand cannons, and it looks like they're doing that. If you fire slowly, if you don't just spam your trigger, you're going to be accurate with hand cannons. However, to combat how effective they would be if they had perfect accuracy, they're really pulling in on the range on hand cannons, which I think is a perfect compromise. I really honestly think they listened to the community from this one, and they absolutely nailed it. Auto rifles. I really, honestly, these numbers are so infinitely small that they're talking about with the auto rifles that we're really going to have to wait to see. I'd love to say that the Shadow Price and the Soros regime are going to be efficient, good, effective weapons to use in the Crucible, but we're just going to have to wait and see how that actually plays out. A lot of people in my Twitch chat were talking about Soros regime. I'll be honest with you, I don't think the Soros regime is ever going to come back to the meta because they changed the stability on that gun, so it's really hard to kind of maintain fire on somebody's head with it. What you're really going to be looking for out of these slow rate of fire auto rifles is something with really high stability so you can just kind of ping somebody's head repeatedly with multiple shots in a row. They're also increasing the precision damage for all auto rifles. So like the Doctrine of Passing, if you've got a good roll on that and you can really kind of focus your fire on somebody's head, the time to kill will go down. They did show off the raid auto rifle a little bit in the stream, and it looked like it was killing pretty quickly, but the targets weren't moving at all. So we'll have to wait and see on the auto rifles. The special weapon ammo economy changes, man, theoretically, I guess it sounds pretty cool. It does have the potential to snowball certain matches, especially in Trials of Osiris. I'm a little bit worried about that, but with this kind of a thing, I really want to play it. I want to get in there, see how it feels. Theoretically, I like it, but before I pass judgment on that one, I really need to see how that one plays out. So overall, I'm very excited about this. They're making some really smart changes, some really nice adjustments to the way that the Crucible is going to play. And in some cases, they're really changing how, what kind of weapon we're really going to be looking for when we get weapon drops. I'm definitely going to be looking for some low rate of fire auto rifles. Same goes with pulse rifles, low rate of fire pulse rifles. Definitely going to be looking for hand cannons. Now that range is no longer tied to initial accuracy on hand cannons, it'll be interesting to see what becomes a god roll on a hand cannon, and if the current IS Luna type hand cannon stays kind of the meta. It'll be very interesting to find that out as we continue on with this. I suspect that range is going to still be very important for hand cannons because of the range fall off has been dramatically increased. So we'll have to wait and see. Either way, I'm happy to see change in the Crucible. I can't wait till next week so we can start playing this thing. I think the live team, the Crucible team, did a great job. They listened to the community clearly with these changes, and it's going to be a lot of fun to jump into the Crucible with a new meta after all this time. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. It ended up being quite a bit longer than I thought it was going to be. We're up to about 16 minutes here. Thank you very much for sticking with me, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.